Keith Pompey, Philly.com, the Inquirer, Sixers and Heat tonight. He writes about Marco Bellinelli. He had a 25 the other night, shooting from all angles. And Keith, he says he thinks they need to set the tone early in this game. Does that mean bombs away again?
Yep. You better, people better, hide behind the couch because there's going to be a lot of bombs out there.
Oh, man.
I don't know. But, yeah, they're going to try to come out and attack them. And let's face it, that's the way they play. I mean, since Joel Embiid has gone down, they've been shooting a lot of three-pointers. They've been making a lot of three-pointers. So, I mean, why change the approach now?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I saw the comments from Redick the other night who said, we play faster. The stats are kind of suggesting that the Sixers are, playing better without Joel Embiid. So, I mean, do they keep playing with him until something goes without him until something goes wrong?
No, I mean, I think right now they'll play without him until they feel as if that, he's ready to come back and play. I mean, we can't get it twisted. Now, they do shoot, as I should say, they shoot a lot of threes. They were shooting threes beforehand when they had them. It's just that right now they play with the up-tempo pace for a longer period of time. There were stretches before where they would run up and down, and then they would feed him in the post. Right now they're not feeding anyone in the post. They're just going. But what I mean by don't get it twisted, this team is a whole lot better with Joel Embiid. This team can't, win in the next round without Joel Embiid. So when Joel Embiid is ready to come back, they will bring him back.
I would agree with that, by the way. I mean, it's one of those situations where, yeah, maybe they're on a nice run right now, but if you want to make a legit deep run, and right now, Keith, does it look like this team is capable of making a legit deep run?
I mean, yes, they look like it, and this was only game one. They're going to make adjustments, talking about the Miami Heat. The Sixers, I mean, I think that the true test that we're going to get from this team is game 3. And the reason why I'm saying that is, everyone talks about, yes, Ben Simmons didn't look like a rookie. Yes, Markelle Fultz didn't look like a rookie. Dario Saric, they did not look like first-time competitors in the playoffs. But they were playing at home. When the crowd was they were feeding off of the energy of the crowd. I'm not saying that they can't do it in Miami, but at the same time, it's going to be different because now they're going to have 20,000 people every possession yelling at them, screaming at them, and they're not going to get the positive energy from the crowd. Miami will. So that's, in my opinion, is when we're going to find out, is this team built and is this team capable enough to make a deep run in the playoffs?
Keith, what were your thoughts on T.J. McConnell getting in the game before Fultz and playing alongside Ben? Because does Fultz have to have a bigger role if the Sixers want to be that team coming out of the East?
Well, I think, I think a lot of it has to do with Phil, with Brett Brown bringing T.J. in earlier than Markelle. But if you look at it, Markelle played way more minutes than T.J. did. So, maybe it's one of those things where you feel as if early in the game, I got to get TJ involved to get his head in there. I'm not saying that TJ's head is not in the game, but maybe that's what Brett Brown felt at that particular time. In regards to Markelle, it's one of those things where Markelle and Ben Simmons are both great point guards in regards to getting their teammates involved. But you also have to surround them with shooters. And if you want to keep Ben on the floor, and you want to get Markelle more minutes, then that's going to be a problem with the way the team is set up right now. So I think the amount of minutes that he's playing now, he may get up a couple more. But, the thing about it is, Ben Simmons is playing at a high rate right now to whereas, you don't want to mess that up and bring both of them in or bring Markelle in. And then you're going to take away from Ben's minutes. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Now, it would be completely different if both of those guys were exceptional three-point shooters, but they're not. So, unfortunately, at this particular time, the Sixers want to win games. They're not about trying to groom those two together. That's going to wait until next year.
Keith, you brought up the word adjustments a minute ago. I'm going to lay this stat on you. Eric Spoelstra teams They've won their last 6 games with trailing 1-0 in a series. They're 7-1 in such games overall. So that does mean that, and it suggests that adjustments are going to be made. What adjustments do you expect the Heat to make?
I mean, first of all, I think the one adjustment is better defending your three-point line. That's one. The second one is they're going to have to, cut down the Sixers' transition. And, I think they're probably going to have to play Ben Simmons physical. I mean, that's what they're going to try to do because Ben Simmons is the one who was, getting guys easy shots. So I think as what Brett Brown typically says, you have to cut off the head of the snake. So I expect to see them trying to get physical and play real aggressive with Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and then Brett Brown has to make adjustments to their adjustments, right? What do you think? Is he trying to anticipate what their adjustments will be, and then adjust to that? It's back and forth.
I mean, it will be a back and forth, but at the same time, I think that right now the Sixers, until someone can stop them, they're going to continue to do what they do. They're going to go out there, they're going to run, they're going to play free, they're going to shoot threes, transition, they're going to play defense. They're going to crash the boards. They're going to play team ball. And until someone can stop it, that's what they're going to do.
And no turnovers in that second half on top of that hot shooting from the outside, too. Turnovers, sometimes they're bugaboo, and they didn't turn the ball over.
Yeah, exactly right. They played at a high level. Now, I don't think we can expect them to play that way, every night. I mean, they were great. But at the same time, I think that, they realized and they saw like this is what we can do when we play team ball. They also kind of shrunk the rotation in that second half too. So I think that the Sixers they'll be fine. They'll be fine. But I think the true test is going to come in Game 3.
We're talking with Keith Pompey, Philly.com, the Inquirer here, Sixers Heat tonight. Now he said that he wanted the team to take the adult sort of vision of truly where we're at. What do you think he meant by that comment there?
That means realize that Game 1 is over. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, adults, you move on. We're on to the next one. We also realize that, okay, yes, we destroyed the Miami Heat in Game 1, but the Miami Heat, they have egos. They're adults. They have pride. They're going to come out and they're going to play a whole lot better. This isn't playing in the church league where you got a better team over the other one and you just destroy them every time you play them. This team is going to come back and they want to beat the Sixers and they're going to give them everything that they can. So that's the vision. That game is over with. Let's move on to the next one.
You look at tonight, do you anticipate Amir Johnson being back in the starting lineup, or do you think he rolls right back out with Ersan Ilyasova?
I anticipate him being in the starting lineup. I mean, because, the thing about it is this game is a chess match. So, Miami, the coach said, I expect Brett to go with Ersan Ilyasova. That's great and all that. But then at the same time, you're kind of playing your hand to Miami. I expect the Sixers to do what they've been doing. Like I said, if it doesn't, as long as it keeps working, keep doing it.
Right.
I do expect them to have, lineups where they have that small ball lineup again. But why would you change it? I understand what the other coach said, but you know what I mean. It's one of those things. I would expect the Sixers to do what they did, the other games, the other 9 games that they were without Joel Embiid.
Keith, any feel on Embiid? For Thursday night, I guess he's kind of indicated, I'd like to play. I'm just going to wait till they give me the okay. But when you start that, it starts to get that feeling of he's ready to go, and they're kind of holding him back.
All right, this is kind of like a touchy situation. I don't think they're holding him back. What I think is, of course, Joel Embiid would love to play, but we have to be realistic here. The guy has an eye injury. Right? So you have to be 100. Now, this isn't the first time that he had this injury. He had it in Kansas. He was able to come back and play, shortly. But the more, the more times you get hit in your eye, the greater the cause of permanent damage is. So when you bring someone back, you have to be 100% careful. Now, he could come back on Thursday, but as of yesterday, he hadn't been cleared to practice, and practice was only, like the equivalent of a regular season shoot-around. And what he is doing right now is he's like out there. He is, he's doing like shooting drills, and he's doing an individualized workout. The next step for him is to play like 4-on-4 with the low-minute guys and the guys they have on staff. So, if you're looking at the Sixers, some people may say they're holding him back. He wants to play. No, they're being 100%, careful with this guy. Now, when he's ready, it could be Thursday, it could be next Saturday, or it could be, the game after that of the next series. But, with Brett Brown, all we said is we have to buy time. We have to go out there and we have to play and we have to help him out because they don't want to throw him out there before it's too soon. And let's think about this. Think about if they put him out there. They could play him tonight and he'll be excited. The crowd will be excited. Everyone in the league knows that his eye is still tender and is still trying to heal, right? So, and I'm not saying that there are dirty players in this league, but if they know you have a weakness, then they go after that. And if he goes down, he suffers his eye, and the next thing you know, everyone who's saying, oh, Brett Brown's the greatest coach, are saying, what an idiot. They would have won this game without him. You know what I mean? So I think the Sixers are just trying to be careful with their franchise player.
Right. And there's a fine line of holding him out because you, quote-unquote, don't think, he's necessary. And like you said, this is a team that realistically, if they want to make a run, they need him, and they got to get him into game shape and got to get him playing at some point. So you can't just hold him out because you deem he's not necessary to win this series. You want to get him implemented as fast as you can.
Exactly. I mean, believe me, they all want him to. I mean, everyone wants him to play, but at the same time, you just got to go through the proper steps. I mean, he just cleared concussion protocol, and the reason why the concussion protocol was like basically extended or delayed was just because, he had to have the eye surgery. So after that, after a couple of days after that, that's when they started the protocol. You know what I mean? So, it's great, when you go out there and you see like 20,000 people screaming, you see the national exposure that this team is getting. Of course you're Joel Embiid. Of course you want to play, But then there was also, I remember when he said that, I really want to play, but I also want to be smart about it. So that's the thing, and let's face it. There's been times when we thought that Joel Embiid was going to, hey, come on, Brett, you need to play him on back-to-backs right now. And they're like, oh, we're going to wait. We're going to wait. So I don't think that this is any different. Again, I think that if he does play on Thursday, if he does play on Saturday, if he does play the game after that, it's going to be because they deem him to be 100%, or not quite 100%, but, capable of playing. They just do not want to have him injured just for the sake of saying we need this big guy out here to clinch a win.
Keith Pompey is with us talking Sixers and Heat game 2 tonight. So, Keith, after assessing that game 1 the other night, what would concern you about this Heat team moving forward?
You're saying what would concern me? I mean, the thing about it is if it's close, if a game is close, you don't want them like having ISO and then saying, come on, D-Wade, we want you to find us out in the youth. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's the thing. And he can do that. You just don't want that. So and what Marco said, that you got to go out there and you have to attack them, do that. Now, the biggest unknown is, like you said, that, Eric Spoelstra, typically wins game 2s, especially after losing game 1. So, right now this is a chess match. So you don't know what they're going to try to do. I mean, of course, they're going to try to erase some things, but then there's going to erase some mistakes. But there are some other things that they're going to try. So, if I'm Brett Brown, you're just like going to prepare for everything. You're going to think of some weaknesses. Now you can look at it like Miami didn't shoot the ball well from the foul line.
Right.
They gave up Hassan Whiteside. You know, he admitted to being not aggressive enough because he's so used to facing Joel Embiid. He thought it was going to be a cakewalk, and he had a horrible game. So I'm expecting them to feed him, to get him more involved. You know, I'm also expecting Goran Dragic to have a better game. So, you know, these are 3 guys who I mentioned that I feel as if that, you know, they're going to try to slow it down. They're going to have their all-star point guard try to get him to have a great game. They're going to feed the post to keep the big man happy. And what happens is they're going to try to keep it close. And then in the fourth quarter, they're going to try to turn Dwayne Wade loose.
Keith Pompey's with us now. That's on the court in the games. You had a Q&A with the owner, Josh Harris, and I found it to be a really good Q&A with him. And you really, you know, started out with the key question in all this, which is how did he have the patience to tank essentially for 3.5 seasons, and how his overview of those 3.5 years got them to this point. What are some of the key things from that conversation with Josh Harris that really stood out to you?
Well, the number one thing that stood out to me is that, you know, Sam Hinkie gets a lot of credit for the process, right?
Yep.
I mean, he was the one in charge.
From a lot of the fans.
Excuse me?
From a lot of the fans.
From a lot of the fans. But I also think that you have to give Josh Harris more, equal amount, if not more, because it got to a point that it was extremely embarrassing, you know, and you know his team was the laughing stock of the league, but he had the patience to say to Sam, continue doing this, you know, and I think that, you know, while Hinkie gets credit, Josh Harris and the ownership group needs to get equal amount of credit, if not more, because they could have easily said, no, we're done with this. I don't want to do it, right? And also, I also got the fact that this guy is hungry. He wants a championship. You know what I mean? And that's what he talked about. He says, like, you know, it may not come this year. He says, I'm not going to, you know, speak of that saying we want one this year. But he says, ultimately, I'm not satisfied until we win a championship. That's the reason why we started this, you know, rebuilding process. It wasn't just to get good. It was ultimately to win a championship. And the third thing is that he really likes Brett Brown. I mean, he wants Brett Brown to come back. He said that all those other years was just all about, you know, they weren't judging everything on wins and losses, but this year was. And he said that Brett Brown exceeded expectations. So those are the 3 things that I got out in the conversation with Josh Harris.
Yeah. Now, the part about, you know, that he waited for 3.5 years, you know, was my question has always kind of been, you know, a lot of people give Sam a lot of credit. Does he, in retrospect, give Sam a lot of credit, or does he look at it differently than maybe the fans do?
I didn't really ask him, you know, questions about Sam. I mean, in the past, you know, he'll say stuff. Here's the deal. I mean, if Brian Colangelo was the general manager at the time or someone else, I mean, I kind of think that they probably would have done the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, maybe some GMs would say, hey, I'm not trying to tank. But it just seems like if you look at a lot of the moves that are being made, even after Brian Colangelo came on, and what I'm talking about is last year they were trading guys for like getting draft picks.
So in other words, Keith,
like that.
Sam didn't have to convince Josh, like, this is a plan that I want to do. Are you on board? Josh was on board with a plan like this from the get-go.
I mean, that's your words. I mean, that's your words. You know what I mean? I just feel like, you know, Josh, whatever the plan was, whoever came out with the plan, you know, he backed it up. You know what I mean? And he wanted to do it. He wanted to win a championship. And he realized that in order to win a championship, you had to go through the draft. You know what I mean? He wanted to go through the draft as opposed to the free agency. I don't know who came in the room and said it. You know what I mean? Again, you know, I didn't ask him that. I don't know whose idea it was. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at some of the moves that if you look at some of the moves that
Colangelo
was making after he was initially hired, they were similar to the moves that Hinkie was making. The only, like, the commonality in there was the ownership group.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? So the ownership group had to have a plan. You know, they were doing stuff and they were stockpiling assets. And what happened is this year, what they were doing, they're starting to get rid of these assets. You understand? And also they have all this cap space still. They're still like getting these contracts to where they can have cap space to sign their players, their
right.
superstars, right, and go out in the free agency to get other superstars. I mean, think about this. So they gave J.J. Redick $23 million this year, right?
Right.
A lot of people were saying, "Yo, you're giving J.J. Redick $23 million. You're giving Amir Johnson $11 million. Man, they're just overpaying people." Well, that's no different, or it to me is better than in the past when there were certain guys who they waived who were making $12 and $11 million to play for other teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's kind of like, so when you think of it, it's one of those things where, yes, they're paying players, but now they're just paying their own players as opposed to playing players on other teams.
Yeah, no, it's because one of the questions that you asked was, did you ever feel like abandoning this? And he's like, not really. So it sounds like from the beginning he was convinced, whether it be from Sam or this was his own idea, that this was the best way to go about it. Because everybody says, well, there's more ways to do it than just what they did. But Josh felt that this was the best way to do it.
Exactly. And here's something I will say also, there's a lot of, like, beforehand when we would go on the road, reporters would, like, ask the Sixers, hey, what does it feel like to be the laughing stock? Oh, Brett, how are you dealing with this and that? Now they're like, hey, do you have any advice for other coaches? Because they're trying to follow the same format that you guys are doing. You know what I mean? So it's like again, Josh Harris went from being, wow, what are you doing, to now like, yo, you guys were smart. You guys were ahead of your time.
Right. Good stuff. Check it out. Keith Pompey on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers to check out his Q&A with Josh Harris and all his coverage of Sixers and Heat. He appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Keith, thank you, pal.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, fellas.